COVID really showed how little people care about students and workers with disabilities. At the beginning of the pandemic, within a matter of weeks, universities and jobs easily put in place video lectures or video meetings and had captioning on all these things. But when people with disabilities had been asking for decades for these accommodations, they were denied and told it would be too much work. And then post lockdown, these accommodations were literally just scrapped, leaving the many people with disabilities who benefited from them in the same position as they were pre COVID. But now it is very clear that universities could easily implement these standards, they're just not willing to. When I was at UConn, I sent out a survey to everyone who received disability accommodations at the school and asked what the university was doing that was good for people with disabilities, what needed to change, and if there were any suggestions. And I also mentioned some questions about the COVID pandemic. Many of the people with disabilities who responded said that remote classes or working remotely accommodated them so their disabilities were not as noticeable. And this can be held true across many different disabilities. People with mobility issues didn't have to spend the time walking to class, which can be challenging and add a lot of time to the day, and it can also potentially injure them. This is especially true given the short amount of time that you have to get from one class to the other. The time given is not enough for people with any form of mobility issues, or who rely on elevators, which often add several minutes to a route, or you have to take roundabout ways to get in through accessible entrances. And these things just added more burden to the plates of people with disabilities. This could also help people who have sensory issues, who can't focus in crowded or noisy environments. And this can be things like autism, anxiety, ADHD, PTSD, and many other disabilities. Having recorded lectures just made it so that people could go back and look back at lectures when they were able to, and they didn't have to be forced to take down all of their notes during that period of a lecture. This also makes it so that if you miss class, but there's a recorded lecture, then you can easily watch back and not miss any materials, which was never really the case. And oftentimes professors would say just get notes from someone in your class, but not everyone takes notes to the same level as you do. And people might not have written down everything, so you could be missing some important information. I know I had been in a car accident, and that caused a separation of my AC joint. So when I would write, my arm would be in incredible amounts of pain and would sublux or pop out of the socket. And then I also just have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, where writing causes a lot of pain. So a lot of times when I would watch a lecture, in person, the professor would talk too fast or there'd be too much to write down. And by the time they flipped to the next slide, I was still writing. And this made it so I missed things. And having these virtual or recorded lectures made it so that hearing impaired people who can't necessarily hear during the lecture, they actually had the ability to be able to read the text because most of these platforms provided captioning. Even at the University of Rochester, where Rochester has the largest per capita amount of deaf individuals, like, people were saying that they were putting in requests to get sign language interpreters for their lectures, and they had to push for a long time, and most classes still didn't have these sign language interpreters, which made it so they spent all this money to go to this university, but they couldn't understand the material that the teachers were teaching people. And even for people without disabilities, having recorded lectures or virtual lectures made it so if you were sick or injured, people could either watch it virtually and not have to be exposing people to any sort of illnesses that they have, or they could watch it back at a later time. And they could also participate from home, which is really important for classes that have things like clicker questions, where you have to answer questions and it during class, and that's a portion of your grade. Even if you don't get sick or injured, it can help all students study by being able to look at sections they may have missed or where the professor spoke too fast. And this can also help people study because they can replay audio instead of having to look at their notes. At UConn, I tried to implement mandatory recording of all lectures post COVID, but the admin failed to move forward with this. And I think that all university and places of work should implement these policies because it benefits everyone, especially at universities where people pay tens of thousands of dollars a year to learn. They should be able to get the most of the material and the education that they're being given. Now, I could get accommodations for, excused absences, or I could get lectures recorded, but a lot of times it wasn't done to the same extent as during COVID. A lot of my classes actually said we can't move you online, or professors really put up a fight when they had to do these online recorded lectures, or they might accidentally forget to turn the audio on or forget to start recording, and then I just miss it completely. And professors are much less likely to do it if they think that this is only for one person and only one person has access to it. And if everyone needs this, if everyone says they want this, this service of recorded lectures, they're more likely to do it and do it well and give everyone the same access to all the materials. And this is just another iteration of why having society be accessible for everyone by default would actually benefit everyone.